how he survived.
Guess I'll say a few words. So we're giving a shiur now. The Eloi Nishmas, Mordechai Yochanan ben Yehuda David. His family generously donated the shiur today and sponsored it. Eloi Nishmaso, and this year they dedicated it, the Day of Learning, for the safety and success of all the soldiers of Tzahal and the return of the hostages as soon as possible. May Hashem give them Yeshua, v'ripui, v'chayim, arukim, lirאות yamim, tovim l'kulanu. So Mordechai Jacoby was a beloved friend and mentor and a founding member of our kollel, a really, really great man. He sat next to me for years in kollel, and he was really an inspiration. I did a little research this morning. I'm going to share. Besides the many years we were together in kollel, sometimes Mordechai needed to go to Yerushalayim for a doctor's appointment or whatever, and so I would take him in my car, and then we would have half an hour to schmooze, and I got to hear stories of his life, and his life was fascinating. He was born in 1929 in a place called Legenia, which is in Slovakia. And so I Googled it this morning. There's a famous piece, Jeff, his son, Mordechai, and his wife, Arlene, had a beautiful family of 5 kids, lots of grandkids, and already now some great-grandkids. And Jeff is a syndicated national opinion writer for the Boston Globe. And there's a famous piece he has about my dad, which I also can put up on the screen shortly. Anyway, I don't think Google actually found the right place. I put in Legenia, Slovakia, but it's giving me Legen, Slovenia. And so even though Americans, we still know there's a difference between Slovenia and Slovakia. Anyway, Mordechai told me, and it was on the border with Hungary, okay? And also Mordechai taught me that I grew up knowing there was a country called Czechoslovakia. And that was the name of the country, I think, that when he was a kid. But today, there are 2 different places, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And we could see them here, Czechia and Slovakia. And what Mordechai explained was that Czechia, like Prague, was sort of a modern country. And Slovakia, which is further Eastern Europe, it's right next to the Ukraine here, was very primitive. And so although Mordechai was born in 1929, it could have been 1829, 1729, 1629, or 1529, and not much would have been different. Life had not changed. He was born in a farming village. There were like half a dozen families. And so life was extremely primitive. He did say they had a gasoline-powered, like farming piece of equipment to do something, but that was essentially the only technology they had. No, certainly no electricity, no running water, none of that stuff. This was really, really primitive Eastern Europe lifestyle, and Mordechai's own education was disrupted. He went to live with his grandparents in a little bit bigger place than his father and mother's place on the farm. And then the war broke out in his teenage years, and so his education was disrupted. So he did not have a lot of formal education, but he did have a love of learning. And he educated himself greatly, became really a Talmid Chacham, a person who loved learning. He went to Daf Yomi for years. He learned the Parsha, mamish religiously, and he learned with us many, many years. He used to give over some of the Shiur, the Mishnayos. And he had this quiet strength about him. So, yeah, this is from Jeff about the tree he sprang from. And this is a picture of he told me about his name. It was Marcus Jacobovic, and he said Jacobovic, which means son of Jacob, right? The Vich and the Vic just means son of in the Slavic, like in Russian and so forth. So Jacobovic is son of Jacob, and this is part of, I think, being a Holocaust survivor. When he came to the New World, he wanted to keep his name, but he wanted to change his name. So he changed it to very similar. He changed it to Jacoby, which captures the Jacobovic, but is a little bit of a new name. So this was him in 1946, after they had been liberated, and it said he weighed 65 pounds when they were liberated, and he was delirious essentially with fever, and it took a long time for him to come back to himself. He told me at that time, after being through what they had been through, he felt he was like an animal, and it took him a long time to get his humanity back. That was something he talked about. And ultimately, he went into the furniture business. This is a story. There were race riots in Cleveland, and his father's furniture store at Ground Zero, St. Clair and 103rd, I know where that is. My grandparents used to live right near there. In the Glenville neighborhood, my grandparents went to Glenville High School. So for days, the area was racked by pillaging and arson. The violence was made worse by the mayor's order that all white police officers stay out. Crazy. To deter the looters, signs reading "Soul Brother" appeared in the windows of black-owned establishments. But there was no such sign in Mark Jacoby's window. And by the time it was safe enough for him to venture back into the city, he expected to find his store reduced to a burnt-out shell. He found it untouched. The pawn shop next door had been gutted, and the rioters had ransacked the A&P supermarket across the street. But Mark's Furniture and Appliance Company had not suffered so much as a broken window. At the height of the riots, my dad later found out a group of tenants who lived in the apartment units above the store had come down to the street and formed a human chain in front of the entrance. "Stay away from this place," they told the looters. "It belongs to a good man." That's an unbelievable story about good black people protecting the property of a good white guy, a good Jewish man from Slovakia. And that sort of captures his goodness. And again, he was a quiet man. He wasn't a man of a lot of words. He was a doer. He was the gabbai in the shul of Young Israel for many years. He would lane, and he davened, and he was matter of fact. And I'm thinking about him, like I said, inspiration in these difficult days of adversity, particularly in Israel. The whole world is in strife and a rise in anti-Semitism. But Mordechai had a lot of power. I once said he was more powerful than a locomotive. Again, he survived the 5 camps, and he did the right thing. And Jeff has in this piece, when he asked his father, like, how did he survive, or was there something, a dictum or something in his mind, an ideal that kept him going? And Jeff was looking for something poetic or idealistic. And Mordechai answered, "I always knew I had to keep my shoes. And so every night when I went to sleep in the camps, I put my shoes under my head. Because if you didn't have shoes, you didn't have long to live." So it was very prosaic and very practical, not a high ideal or anything philosophical, but a key to survival. Because de Hashem, Mordechai did what he needed to do, and he never became embittered or lost. And so we were Zeicha later in his life that when he came to Beit Shemesh at an early time. He came to Beit Shemesh. He told me when he bought the place in Beit Shemesh, people said, "You're crazy, Beit Shemesh, it's like a development town." It's a backward. What are you going there for? But Baruch Hashem, they were early members of the beautiful community that our kollel is a part of Anglos and retirees living in Beit Shemesh, a beautiful Torah lifestyle. So Mordechai was a pioneer in that respect. So the Divrei Torah that I want to share today, Le'ili Nishmaso, are in Parshas B'Shalach, and from another great Jew of a little bit earlier era, but also a victim of the Holocaust, and that is the Piashetzner Rebbe, the Eish Kodesh, Reb Kloni Meskalman Shapira, Hashem Yinkom Damam, was a very, very special Polish Rav. He was born to his father from a second marriage. His father must have been an old man near the end of his life when he and his brother were born. So his father passed away shortly thereafter. And so the Piashetzner Rebbe grew up in a rabbinic family, a Hasidic family, but as an orphan. And he ultimately marries his sister's daughter. Okay, his sister was a generation older than him, essentially, and so his brother-in-law became his father-in-law, and he was like his rebbe. So again, it's a Chassidish thing. But his wife, the Piaseczner Rebbe played the violin, and he studied medicine, and so he did both folk healing and healing using shemois as well as medical healing. He was a Renaissance man, a really great man. And there's a story about Divrei Torah Ksavim, writings that were found in his house, and the Dvar Torah starts in his own handwriting and it ends in his wife's handwriting. So she was writing the Divrei Torah with the Zohar and the Chassidus along with the Rebbe. So really, really great people and way ahead of their time. His writings, he buried them in the ground. They were found miraculously after the war and sent to his nephew, I guess, in Eretz Yisrael and published, Baruch Hashem. So we have the Eish Kodesh. He was in the Yohrtzeit ghetto, and ultimately he was murdered. But his spirit and his Divrei Torah are very, very powerful, because these are Divrei Torah that were delivered in the ghetto in 1941, 40, 41, 42, 43. So I was thinking, I told you already last week about Parshas Bo, which is like the Jewish people leaving Egypt triumphantly. And we read this morning in Shul, the Bnei Yisrael Yotzim biyad ramah. So we're going out with the upper hand, biyad ramah. And that's just not my mood these days. I don't feel much Yad Ramah, right? With all the awful things happening and all the darkness around us. So I thought, where can I turn? And so I thought the Piaseczner Rebbe. How did the Piaseczner Rebbe feel? Yotzim biyad Ramah, when he's in the Warsaw ghetto. His son was murdered the very first days of the war when they bombed Warsaw. His son was killed in the bombing. And he lost his wife at this time. So he was in an awful situation, and ultimately he himself was murdered. And yet throughout these years, he's delivering these divrei chizuk, these deep divrei Torah, divrei chasidus. And so he is an inspiration of staying with it and sharing the Dvar Hashem despite great adversity. So I thought he was an appropriate place to look for divrei Torah on this occasion of Mordechai's Yohrtzeit. So here it is. Let me share my screen in Parshas Beshalach. So we're in Pasuk Chaf Aleph and Chaf Beis. Vadonoi hoylech lifnei yomam be'amod anon lanchoisam haderech ve'layla be'amud eish la'ir lahem laleches yomam v'loyla lo yamish amud anon yomam be'amud ha'eish loyla lifnei am. Hashem went before them in a pillar of cloud by day to guide them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, that they might travel day and night. So we're talking about pillar of cloud and pillar of fire, and the division between day and night, the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. Says the Rebbe, Hinei ad pasuk hazeh, hapsukim ne'emarim beloshen avar, past tense. Vayihi b'sholach paro es ha'am, v'yikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef imo, v'yis'u misukot v'yachanu be'etam. Rak pasuk hazeh beloshen hoveh, ne'emar v'Hashem hoylech. So this is a present tense verb, Hashem holech. And that's a change from previous verbs like vayis'u and vayachanu, which are past tense verbs. So the Rebbe is asking. And so he says, Ki v'Hashem. Okay, va Hashem hoylech lifneihem. The Rebbe is medayek this vav before the Shem Hashem. Whenever you have va Hashem, it's Hashem ubeis dino. It comes from Rashi regarding Avimelech, and also in Sdom, Hashem ubeis dino, because what is the vav achibur? What are you adding to God? So it's God with his divine or heavenly tribunal, the beis din in Shemayim. So ezed din naseh bezel. So what din are we talking about in this case of Hashem holech lifneihem yomam be'amud anan? V'hush ve'eish shehu din. The ezedin naseh bezeh ha'esh shehu din. So it's the fire. הייתה לטובתם להאיר להם בחושכה. והנה רש"י פירש על ואלה המשפטים שטסים לפניהם, שיהיה כשולחן ערוך לפניהם, והיינו לפי ערך שכלם. So the Rebbe is building up that the fire here is a din, Hashem obeys dino, and that when Hashem gives something like the mishpatim, it has to be on the level of people so that people can understand it. V'zeh ve'Hashem holech lifnehem. So that's this word lifnehem. Hu ubeis dino holech lifnehem. Lefi erech tzarchei Yisrael. Hashem and the Beis Din are leading the Jewish people on their level. Shigam ha'esh yeh la'ir lahem b'choshchotam. That in their darkness, there's going to be fire to illuminate the darkness for them. V'kol hadin yeh letovatam. So the Rebbe is speaking about when midat hadin, the divine attribute of justice, of gvura, of the hard things, is in and of itself, although it's bringing judgment on the wicked and it's coming to exact punishment, but at the same time it's coming to bring goodness to the Jewish people. V'gam anu tzrichim lishtamesh behadin behatzaros lavodas Hashem. So this is exactly what we're talking about, that the Rebbe in the midst of the Holocaust is talking about using the dinim, the gzeiros, and the tsaros. We have to find a way to use them in divine service. Lalechet yomam b'layla, to go day and night. Shezeh kvar koi al Yisrael, shehem yelchu yomam b'layla. That despite the adversity and the difficult times, you have to keep going day and night in divine service. V'lefia nizkar la'el haremez b'zeh, shelo rak b'shah shetoiv lo, nelech b'darkei Hashem, mala mala. It's not only in good times that we serve God. Rak batsar v'choshech chas v'chalila lanu. K'sha'esh sharoi b'toiva yekel lo la'avod b'simcha ava v'islavus. In the good times, when the fire is warming and you're in a good situation, so then it's relatively easy to serve Hashem b'simcha, with love and hislavus, excitement. K'shechas v'chalila hu b'tzara yishamesh b'matzavo zeh v'yavod et Hashem b'shviras halev v'ishtapchus hanefesh. But even in the darkness, there is this fire to serve Hashem, even with a broken heart, and to pour out your heart and soul in prayer. So the Rebbe continues. He brings a Gemara in Brachas. Reb Yosi kishispalel b'churva achas michurvos Yerushalayim shama habaskol. So I'm going to read you the Gemara now. It's a Gemara, famous Gemara in Brachas, Daf Gimel, about Reb Yosi, who stopped into a dilapidated building, a half-destroyed building, to pray. Tanya, Reb Yosi, Ham achas hayisi mehalek b'derech, v'nichnasti l'churva achat michurvot Yerushalayim lispalel. So Reb Yosi's on the road and he needs to daven. He enters into a churva, which is, again, a half-destroyed building. Today, there's lots of them in Aza, Nebech also in Be'eri and near Oz. Ba Eliyahu Zachar Latoiv. While Rabbi Yossi is davening in the churva, he's zoichet to a Gilui Eliyahu. V'shamar li ala petach, and Eliyahu stands at the door so Rabbi Yossi can pray undisturbed. V'amar li b'ni ma kol shamata b'churva zu. And Eliyahu Navi says to Rabbi Yossi, my son, what did you hear when you prayed there? V'amarti lo. Shamati baskol sheminahan memes keyoina. Voimeres oy lebonim shababonoiseyem echrabti es beisi v'serafti es heicholi bigleisim leveina umois. So I told him, I heard a voice, a divine voice, a baskol, that was cooing like a dove, and it was saying, Oy, my children, that due to their sins I destroyed my house, I burned the sanctuary, and I exiled them amongst the nations. V'amarli, so Eliyahu Navi told me, Chayecha v'chay roishcha, lo shazu bilvad omeres kach, ele b'chol yoim v'yoim, shalosh pa'amim omeres kach. You should know, it's not just today that voice is crying out, but it's every day, 3 times a day. Velozu bilvad, and not only that, Ele b'shah sheYisrael nichnasim lebati knesios et bati midrashos, v'oinim yehei shmei gadol mevayrach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu menanei roshoi v'oimer. But every time the Jewish people,
אני צריכה לשלם לך.
when the Jewish people come into the synagogue
Hello?
and pray and they say Yehei Shmei Rabbah, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol shakes his head in appreciation. Menanei rosho v'oimer ashrei hamelech shemekalsin oiso b'veiso kach. Fortunate is the king who is praised in his house in this way. Malo la'av shehigles banav v'oy lehem lebanim shegalu me'al shulchan abihem. So what is the situation of a father who was forced to exile his children? How unfortunate are the children that have been exiled from their father's table. So that's the Gemara in Brachas, and that's Rabbi Yossi, and that's what occurred to him when he was in davening in the Churva. So the Rebbe now asks, "V'lama lo shama kashi hispalel b'beit hakneset?" How come Rabbi Yossi was zoicha to this on this day that he was davening in the Churva, and he had never had this experience before? Halo gam kashi Yisrael nichnasim b'bati knesios HaKadosh Baruch Hu shomea tfilasam. So for Rabbi Yossi, ein nanu hasaga. Obviously, we cannot understand the level of Rabbi Yossi. Aval lanu remez hu mipnei shehispalel bechurva michurvot Yerushalayim benishbar libo yoiser lachein shama. So the Rebbe says, perhaps because Rabbi Yossi was davening in a churva, and it broke his heart, and due to his brokenheartedness and his humility under the circumstances, that's what revealed to him and merited that he was able to hear this divine voice, something he had never heard before when he was davening in shul. B'chein pashut kasham mischarim mizbatlim chas v'chalila. The Rebbe here talks about businesses having to close up shop when the soichrim, the merchants, are not doing business. Hein ra umar ma'od ki amcha yisrael tzrichim parnasa. People aren't able to conduct their business lives properly because of the war. Aval bein kach uvein kach lo nivatel azman, and yet time marches on. Ve'ein lanu ma lasot nilmad v'nomar tehillim. So what are they going to do with their time? And the answer is they're going to daven, they're going to say Tehillim. So this is what the Rebbe is pointing out, that in times of travail, when the world is not going along the way it's supposed to, we have an opportunity in the darkness. So both in the good days and in the darkness of bad days. Hashem amerachem yirachem v'yafoch gam et hadin l'toivaso. Hashem holech lifneihem. That's the pshat. Hashem holech lifneihem. Yomam be'amud anan lanchoisem aderech v'layla be'amud esh. The feet are choiseihem, according to the needs of the Jewish people. Ubezeh efshar l'taret ezekushia. And with this, again, this is the ga'oinus of the Rebbe. The Rebbe says we can answer a kasha. Everybody knows, and some things Zev's talked about to us many times. The man. The manna in the wilderness, which fell for each family, it had the capacity to settle disputes. Kinoda shehaman horas fekot umerivot kisherabu al eved shalmihu. Let's say there's a dispute about a person and a slave. To whom does the slave belong? So there's a dispute. Ra'u chelek haman shel ha'eved etzel mi nafal b'kadoime. So he quotes the Gemara Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer kashem she'anavi haya magid lahem liyisrael ma she'b'chorin u'sdakim kach haman magid lahem liyisrael ma she'b'chorin ma she'b'sdakim. Keitzad? Two people come to Moshe. Ladin ze Omer avdi ganavta. One guy claims to Moshe, this guy stole my eved. V'ze Omer atam achartoli. You sold him to me. Amar le Moshe leboker mishpat. Tomorrow morning we'll find out. Lemachar im nimsa omaro bebeis rabo arishon biyadua shezeh genavo. ואם נמצא oimeroi b'bayis rabo hasheni b'yadua shezeh micharo. So there's a dispute. Was the slave stolen or sold? We'll see in the morning, wherever the man is deposited by the Shemayim, that will show that's the true owner of the slave. So the Rebbe is bringing that Gemara, and he's saying, חלק המן של העבד אצל מי נפל וכדומה. ולמה לא נבקחו בעמוד הענן ועמוד האש את ספקות בין השמשות? Okay, so it's well known in halacha that בין השמשות is suffik yom, suffik laila, which is, fascinating that the Jewish calendar every day has a period, 2 periods of ambiguity. Are they day or are they night? Twilight, the time between, let's say, Shkia and Seisek Kochavim. It's called Ben Hashmashos. And in halacha, it has a din suffik yom, suffik laila. So if you have a mitzvah of the day and you're only doing it Ben Hashmashos, you do it without a bracha. And if you need to, you could do the mitzvahs of the night, because Ben Hashmashos is suffik laila. Anyway, there's an existing suffik in halacha. Why, the Rebbe is asking, why can't we determine the suffik, whether it's Amud Anan or Amud Esh? Kol zman she'Amud Anan haya yom, v'kisheba Amud Esh laila. So wouldn't that clarify the suffik? Umi'ata yicholim ledat al tamid kama zman mishkia sechama v'ad yom hu umatai halayla matchil. So they could have determined how long is Ben Hashmashos, until when is it day, and when does the night begin?
Did they ever overlap?
So listen to his teretz, and then we'll see. Aval lefia nizkar le'el ve'Hashem hoylek lifneihem yomam ve'Hashem hoylek lifneihem yomam be'amud anan lo rak kol zman shebe'emes yom hu haya amud anan. So the truth is, the Amud Anan wasn't there only during the day. Ve'amud ha'esh lo ba, rak lifneihem, lefi tzorcheihem, v'yochol liot, she'od be'emet yom haya, rak kivan shelo ra'u Yisrael kol kach, mipnei sheyarad hayom, kvar ba Amud ha'esh la'ir lahem. So maybe Shimon, the Rebbe, is saying what you're saying, that there was some overlap, that despite the Amud Anan was still there, the Amud Eish already showed up to illuminate the twilight for them. So you can't say that when the Amud Anan is there, it's day, and the Amud Eish Laila, because of this word lifneim, and the Rebbe was medaik the va Hashem, that Hashem is there for the Jewish people, and even the darkness is there for the Jewish people, as an opportunity to serve Hashem, not only in the light, in the simcha, but even in the darkness, in the travail, and the adversity, to realize Hashem is with us in the darkness and the adversity, lighting for us the way, bringing us to the place that we need to go. So I don't know anybody who, suffered more adversity and who got through it in such a positive way and built a beautiful life for himself and his family of generations. Mordechai Mamish was a Mayan Mizgaber, an inspiration to all of us. And so I conclude by saying, Yehi Zichro Baruch.
Shalom Hashem and Aliyah.